Well, good morning again, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Advent. If you were out last week on vacation, I've been waiting for you to catch up with me in Christmas. Welcome to the future. It's fantastic. If you're joining us online, we want to say a big welcome to you as well. Thanks for joining us wherever you find yourself today. And while we are so excited that you're there, we will be like a kid on Christmas morning when you're able to join us in person, whenever that is, whether it's during our regular Sunday services at 10:30 or Christmas Eve at 4 p.m. Hey, real quickly, yesterday the Breakfast with Santa was amazing. I'm a little scratchy today because I was outside doing the greeting for it. My family was out there. We had a blast greeting folks. And some of you are here today because you checked us out yesterday. And we're not going to embarrass you. We're just so glad you're here. And Love Inc. was overwhelmed with the amount of donations of those personal care items. It was shocking how much people gave to support those less fortunate in our community. And for those of you who serve, there's around 100 people serving at this thing. We served, I think it was 270 something came through. It was amazing yesterday morning. And best of all, we had a chance to show, it's okay to celebrate. Probably best of all, we had a chance to connect the festivities of American Christmas time with the real meaning of Jesus, and we were able to interact, have so many conversations. So we're so excited for that. Next big opportunity coming up, Christmas Eve. We're going to talk more about that next week. I know December just started, but we're going to talk more about Christmas Eve next Sunday, give you a way to invite some friends to that next big opportunity, just to be able to connect people to the real meaning of Christmas and give them something that they can keep all year round and not just all the fancy lights and stuff like that. So end of that commercial. Thanks so much for those of you who served yesterday. You were amazing. Several years ago, and I guess now 7, 8 years, I was frustrated in the dark. I had one of these moments where I didn't plan something out very well and I got stuck in the dark. You see, I decided it was about this time of year, probably to the week, about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I decided I was going to grill roast a whole chicken. That's really immaterial. But the point is, I was outside trying to do this, and I neglected to realize that when you do this, the sun is going to set a little earlier. Because after all, we're geniuses, and we decided to back the clocks up, which means you simply are in the dark at like 4 o'clock. So I start this thing around 2 or 3 in the afternoon thinking, I got plenty of time. I hit about 4 o'clock, 4:30, and on the back side of the house where it was dark. And so I'm out there trying to read thermometers on the chicken. I'm trying to check the charcoal, and I can't see a thing. Because as soon as I look in, it's pitch black in there, so I have to reach back, and I have to get my cell phone, and I have to, turn on the little light, flashlight. So now I've got one hand, and I'm in here trying to shine this, you think about what I'm doing. I've got this, $1,000 cell phone, and I'm holding it next to flame and chicken, and I'm bending down, and I must have looked like a complete just buffoon out here doing this. I totally didn't plan this out, and I was so frustrated because I had to do stuff with both hands. You ever tried to reach into something hot? Imagine an oven if you're not big into grilling. So I'm reaching into something that's sitting around 400 degrees or so, because I'm trying to speed this thing up to get done by dinner, and I've got to hold this cell phone and reach in here with both hands, but keep the light pointing inside. Yeah, let's just say that did not work out, and I still have a scar from when I touched something really hot. It didn't work out. Have you ever been stuck in the dark, though? Maybe you weren't grilling. Maybe you were driving on a dark road. We're so spoiled in the city. We have a lot of street lights. But go out there between like here and Atwater, and there's some spots that it's dark. You go to the back roads, and there's some spots it's just you and Jesus, and I guess there's cows because you can't see anything else. It is just so dark out there. And maybe if you get there at the right time of night and the fog starts coming in, the mist, I mean, you know what your body does when you're in darkness like that? I mean, you open your eyes as wide as you can to let in any ounce of light there is. And maybe I even find if I'm driving on a dark road, I'll even kind of get tense, kind of lean over a little bit. Your body just kind of reacts to the darkness. We don't like it. And we just kind of, we tense up a little bit. Emotionally, we might even start to feel fear. It's not just little kids that are afraid of the dark. There's a reason we get a little nervous in dark situations, because we don't know what's happening. If you've ever walked through your house in complete darkness, you know that your toes are amazing at finding the corners of everything. I don't know how it does it. You walk that house every day, turn the lights off, and suddenly you have no idea where you're going. In the same house, and it can be a little scary. Now, when as Christians, though, when we're walking through life, we are surrounded by darkness all the time. It is everywhere. It is the world we live in. As disciples of Jesus, we are surrounded, we are inundated, we are marinating in this darkness. And even though Jesus, His light is inside of us and is shining outward, like any marinade, it's sinking into us, and the darkness can affect us. And we begin to forget sometimes who we're called to be and who we are and whose we are and how we're supposed to act, and that we don't have to be afraid of spiritual darkness. But it can be really scary sometimes. Really scary sometimes when you look at the news, you turn on social media, and you kind of get a taste of what the world is dealing with, and the bickering and the anger and the hatred, and you just kind of shake your head sometimes and you go, man, why are we doing this? Now, I'm the first one to say you can't blame the world for acting like the world because it doesn't know any better. I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about us. What about us? How do we respond to that kind of darkness? Because as the people of God, we're not immune to it. We're not suddenly removed from it so that we never feel it. We do. We feel the absence of peace. We feel the presence of darkness. What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do when it begins to infiltrate our own hearts, our own lives, and we begin to act more like the darkness than we do the light sometimes? And then here we come in the month of December. We have such an opportunity to really shine Jesus' light the brightest because they literally play His songs in stores. We have a chance to shine that light so brightly, but the darkness tells us to retreat and to back up. So in this message series, The Countdown to Christmas, we're not just looking forward to Christmas Eve, and we're not just looking forward to Christmas Day. We're not just looking forward to the Sunday after Christmas. No. We're trying to make sure we, disciples of Jesus, remember why we light Advent candles 2,000 years after these events. We still want to remember why we are called to live differently and how we can take a real piece of Christmas with us all year round. And so today we're talking about the countdown to the end of darkness. The countdown to when Jesus' light came down and just exploded onto the scene. And we're in the book of Isaiah, where we are going to be for most of this series. Isaiah foretold these events 700 some odd years before they happened. Before it ever occurred, he's writing with complete certainty of what we look back on 2,000 years later. We're in Isaiah chapter 9 today. Isaiah chapter 9, and it's page 472 in the Pew Bible there in front of you. Also, there's a little note that's going to be on all the scripture passages. If you forget, maybe you're just going to decide in a few minutes to get there. But Isaiah chapter 9, 1 through 6, page 472 in the Pew Bible. And if you do not have a print copy of the Bible for your very own and you want one, please take this as a gift from us. And whether you are taking it as a gift or whether you're just taking it to borrow temporarily, page 472 there. Also, you can look it up in your electronic Bible. I'm in the New International Version. You can look at it on the screens. It's going to be there for you. I don't care how you get into it. Just get into it so that it gets into us, so that we can penetrate the darkness a little better than maybe we did last week or yesterday or even this morning. Isaiah chapter 9, and Isaiah is writing into a world that is falling apart. He's writing as a prophet in the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom of Judah has been just ransacked. It's basically destroyed. All that's left is just remnants of it. What it was a military powerhouse compared to Judah. What it is a smoldering pile of ruins. And Isaiah oftentimes will look towards them and say, okay, southern kingdom of Judah, hey, you king in Jerusalem, look at them. And don't go that way, but in time, that's exactly what the southern kingdom did too. They went there. So Isaiah is not always giving glad tidings and good news. He's usually telling people off and saying, be careful, be careful. That's kind of what we're hearing today, except he's making a prophecy about what happened on the other side of all that destruction. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 6, Isaiah the prophet writes this, "Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the days of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. every warrior's boot used in battle, and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So into this messed up world of his day, Isaiah tells them there's going to be no more gloom. There's coming a day when there will be no more darkness, no more sadness, no more defeat. He highlights these particular geographic regions in verse 1, the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali, because they, in Isaiah's time, were particularly destroyed by the Assyrians when they came through Israel. When Tiglath-Pileser III went through the northern kingdom of Israel, that particular region was just obliterated. It was just flattened. And so Isaiah is now prophesying that when the Messiah comes, he will honor that region that was so destroyed. Now fast forward to Matthew chapter 4, verse 15, and that's exactly what you find. Jesus was identified with that area. He was identified with this very region that Isaiah prophesied the Messiah would honor. And that's what Jesus did. Now, at the time he's writing this 700 years in advance, that wasn't true. It was just a wreck. But he speaks with such confidence. You see, there is a certainty in the future when it comes to the Lord. There's a confidence that we can have in the future, and there's a confidence that he's calling his people to have. And he's telling the people of God, be confident in this. And in verse 2, that's exactly what he's telling them. That there is certainty, that you don't have to doubt anymore. Look at what he says in verse 2 again. He says, the people walking in darkness, and there was a lot of darkness at that time. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. Now, I like pointing out some things sometimes in these verses that familiarity sometimes can make us look over. If you've heard these verses before, maybe you've heard it in reference to Jesus, certainly it is. But you probably haven't really thought about the fact that when Isaiah is writing this 700 years in advance, he's writing it in the past tense. That's how much confidence he has. That he's going to speak as if the Lord has already done these things. Now, from Isaiah's point of view, he would never see it. He would be in the bosom of Abraham long before these events would actually happen. But he's writing with such confidence that he says that the darkness has been defeated, that the light has come, that the people walking in darkness have seen. He's writing as if it's already occurred, even though it won't occur for another 700 years. But that's the confidence we can have in the Lord, that he will finish what he starts. That he's not going to get you halfway there and then kind of drop it and go, oh, wow, kind of messed that one up. No. What the Lord starts, he will finish. And the Lord has been orchestrating Jesus' birth since Genesis chapter 3. So now here we are at Isaiah, just 700 years prior, and Isaiah is saying this is a done deal. If the kingdom of Judah had a bank, he would have told them, take it to the bank. You can bet on this one. It's going to happen. Now this prophecy finds its zenith in verses 3 through 5, when he reminds and tells them that the boots of the Messiah are marching to victory. See, they'd seen a lot of warfare. Man, they'd seen a lot of warfare. The southern kingdom of Judah spent most of its time defending itself. The whole time, every now and again, they'd come back to God and they'd say, God, deliver us, and he would. And then they'd fall back into paganism again and asking other gods to deliver them. These other nations would come in and punish them. They'd constantly dealing with it. And bear in mind, when he's writing this, it had just been a couple of decades prior, they watched the northern kingdom fall. See, the northern kingdom, those were the people that had the money. They had the military. The southern kingdom of Judah, they were the farmers. They had pitchforks. You don't win wars that way. They didn't have much of a defense, and they watched the strong military of the northern kingdom be destroyed by the Assyrians. And so they'd seen a lot of bloodshed and a lot of war. But Isaiah is telling them when the Messiah comes, his boots will march to victory. Now, they had gotten this kind of mixed up, and they'd kind of began to believe by the time of Jesus, for sure, they'd begun to believe that this Messiah would literally be a conquering hero, that he would be a political leader who would rid them of their oppressors. At the time of Jesus, it was the Romans. But they had convinced themselves he was going to defeat that, but that wasn't their real problem. Their ultimate problem was not their politics. Their ultimate problem was their hearts. The ultimate problem is the fact that the people of God were called to be so much more, and were called to be a light to the Gentiles. That's all of us non-Jewish people. They were supposed to be the example to us of what the people of God could be and what a relationship with God looks like, but instead they kept turning away, and they became just like everyone else. And so they kept looking for someone to fight their common problems when the heart of their problem, what they needed was deliverance from the ultimate spiritual darkness that invaded their souls and literally invaded their land and polluted everything they were supposed to be. Now, how would this all happen? What would cause all of this stuff to turn around? What would happen into that darkness? What would need to happen in order to break a new dawn onto the scene? Ironically, it'd be the birth of a child. Isn't that just like not what you would expect? But isn't that just what God does? I mean, they think, here comes our conquering Messiah, and God the Father gives them a baby that needs a diaper change and has to be carried around. But He gave us the light of the world when He did it. And so that rather famous Christmas verse, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, "For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. And the government will be on His shoulders. And He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." See, to make sure we don't miss this, Isaiah now shifts back into future tense. Just to make sure they don't miss the point that this is going to happen. It hasn't happened in the past. It's not going to happen right now. It's going to happen. But He speaks with the same certainty. He's been setting it up for 5 verses. Now He's been setting it up for 8 chapters now. It's going to happen that this light will dawn. And He gives these beautiful titles, these descriptive titles of the Messiah, of Jesus. He says, "And He will be called Wonderful Counselor." Now, there are times I wish we could all read biblical Hebrew. Don't get me wrong, I don't have time to teach you all the Hebrew, but I don't know it all. But this is a phrase in Hebrew, the language Isaiah is writing in, which is only applied to the wisdom of a deity, the wisdom of God. Isaiah is saying something profound. That even in the very beginning of the title, he says, this is no ordinary child, but he has the wisdom of God. He calls Him Mighty God. Now, that would have been blasphemous to call a human king God. But that's what He said this child will be, Mighty God. He says He will be Everlasting Father. In Hebrew, the expression means the Father of forever, or the Father of eternity, or the Father of everlasting. And it's an idiom, it's an expression that basically, roughly Joel translated, means He's eternal. So you have a child that's going to be born that has the wisdom of God, is eternal, and then has this amazing title of Prince of Peace. In Hebrew, that word peace is shalom. Shalom is hard to describe with one word. Peace, certainly, but it also means tranquility, comfort, completeness, wholeness, rest, confidence, peace. And Isaiah is writing this into a world that was far from peaceful, a world where sons and fathers were divided against each other. The nation had been in a civil war for hundreds of years. The northern kingdom had been annihilated. In time, the southern kingdom would be annihilated by the Babylonians. And Jesus would be called the Prince of Shalom. That's a lot we have in common, I think, with that world Isaiah was writing in. Certainly a lot in common with the world Jesus was born into. But we're going to talk more about that Prince of Peace next week as we go on with those verses. But today, I want to make sure you get that this prophecy that Isaiah is writing about 700 years before it happens is this baby of Bethlehem, Jesus. And Jesus ties these pieces together for us. I mean, He doesn't even leave us wondering in the darkness what's happening. He doesn't want us to stub our spiritual toes on the corners of spiritual, furniture to figure this out. He tells us right up front who He is. In John chapter 8, verse 12, He ties back to this very prophecy, and He speaks to the people, and He says, "I am the light of the world." Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. He clarifies any confusion they might have had. They expected a military leader. What they got was a carpenter. They expected a king that came riding into Jerusalem and getting rid of the Romans. What they got was a guy that didn't even have a place to lay his head and was a nomad walking from place to place, who stood up and said, I am the light of the world. I am the fulfillment of that prophecy. Those who follow me, they will have no more darkness. See, Jesus was reminding them their problem was not political. Their problem was spiritual. Their problem was in here. That everything going on out there was something else. This was the problem, and He was going to deliver them. He was going to deliver us from the ultimate darkness. The darkness of our own sin, the darkness of our own mess, the darkness of our own self. He was going to deliver us from that darkness. Oh, yes, dear one in Jesus. Jesus is the light piercing the depth of our darkness. Because that darkness isn't just about, not being able to see some light. The spiritual darkness we have causes our death, our eternal death. It's easy to talk about light and peace and hope at Christmas time. It's a great subject. But the good news is only good news when you realize how bad the bad news really is. Because saying Jesus is the light that illuminates our darkness, big deal. Because most people today, they struggle with realizing how dark our hearts really are if left to our own devices. Way back in Genesis chapter 3, this problem started. Adam and Eve had a pretty simple command: do whatever you want, but one thing. They didn't do that one thing. They fell into sin. And as you read through the Old Testament, what you find is things get worse and worse and worse. And it just spirals downward. So God makes a covenant with humanity, we fail. God makes a covenant with King David, eventually they fail. Northern kingdom of Israel, they have a war, they divide, north and south, they fail. And then everything goes silent. Because the darkness has always been in us. We are the problem. People say, well, Joel, I'm not that bad. I kind of keep most of the Ten Commandments. I've never murdered anybody. But Jesus said if you look on someone and you hate them in your heart, you have murdered them. Oh, I've never committed adultery. That's one of the 10 Commandments too. But Jesus said if you look at someone with sin, with lust in your heart for them, you've already committed adultery. Have you ever told a lie? Did that tax deduction really need to be as big as you said it was? You see, so no matter what we do, at least we've broken 3 of them. So we're at least murdering, lying, adulterers. And the Bible tells us that if we break one part of the law, we've broken all of it. That's how dark we are. We can't even keep the 10. There's nothing we can do to be good enough where God goes, hey, you pass. Good job, humanity. What you find in Scripture is what you find in the world today. If left to our own devices, we always go from bad to worse. That's how dark we are. We don't even want to be good. Sin is fun. That's why we keep doing it. If sin wasn't fun, we wouldn't do it. No, we crave the darkness. Scripture tells us that we want the darkness. That's what our flesh craves. That's why Jesus had to come into the world as a light, piercing the depth of our darkness. And you need to understand that it wasn't just about His birth. His birth is meaningless if it wasn't for the cross and if it wasn't for the empty tomb. You can't have Silent Night without the crucifixion. You can't sing about away in a manger until you deal with why He had to die. He had to die for the likes of me and for you. That's why He had to die. That's why He had to come down here. We made such a mess of it. Jesus said, okay, fine. I'm going to come down there and I'm going to clean this up. Because we were so lost and so sinful. And so Jesus Himself said in John 12:32 about the cross, He said, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. He's speaking of the cross. Because that's why He came. Because our darkness had to be pierced. Someone had to come in and do for us that which we could not do for ourselves. And so He did. He came down. He chose to be born. He chose to walk the path all the way to the cross, taking our sin, taking our death, and exchanging that and giving us life. He was born and He died so that we can live. That's what Christmas is about. This amazing, almost reckless from a certain perspective, that the King of the universe would do this for us. That's amazing. But that's how dark we were, and that's how loving He is. And so on this side of salvation, on this side of us following Him and committing our lives to Him, we understand the words of Ephesians chapter 2, verses 14 through 18, when Paul the Apostle says, He Himself, that's Jesus, is our peace, who has made the two groups, in this case, Jew and Gentile. He's made the Jews and Gentiles one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in His flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in Himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace. And in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which He put to death their hostility. He came and preached peace to you who were far away, that would be us who weren't Jewish and didn't know, and peace to those who were near, the people who were Jewish and were looking for the Messiah. Verse 18, for through Him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit. It's only possible because of what Jesus did on the cross, that He is the light piercing the depth of our darkness. You got to get this. He paid our death. That's what the cross means. In that little stable, in that little nativity scene that you have at your house, remember there's always a shadow of the cross over it. Always. And maybe every single time Joseph's hammer struck a nail, or when Jesus struck a nail, it makes you wonder, did He wince? Knowing that one day that would be Him. He would be the one nailed. There's always a shadow of a cross over your manger scene. And we did that because we were so lost and so undone that Jesus came down to put us back together. And He's the light piercing the depth of our darkness. He is a bright light in dark places. Now, after that particular incident with the chicken, I got one of these. And it is no longer a problem. I can wrap this thing on my head. I won't do it now because I'll blind the camera. But I can put this on my head, and I have both hands free. I look like a choo-choo train, but I don't burn myself anymore because I needed a light. And you can get the connection, right? We're so in darkness. Jesus comes down. He gives us a great light. He illuminates us not from the outside in. He illuminates us from the inside out. See, as Christians, we don't need more light. We need to be obedient to the light we've got. It's already there. We just got to be obedient to it. Where in your life does Jesus need to shine that light a little brighter? I'm talking to Christians, okay? I'm not talking about some kind of religious moving some stuff. I'm talking to Christians who've committed their life to Jesus, and this is your story. You have that moment in your life when His story intersected yours, when His cross paid your sin, and you know it, and you cross that line. I'm talking to you. Where does Jesus need to shine His light in your life? Let me ask you it this way. That's a kind of a churchy way to say it. Where's that one spot that you don't act like a Christian? That's where He needs to shine His light. Someone gets your order wrong. You do a pickup order at Target and they mess it up and you go in and you let that manager have it. That's where you need to let His light shine in and be a little more patient with people working. People in retail, thank you. I know the public can be mean. I worked in retail for just a few months and I thought I'd never survive. Oh my goodness. Yeah, see, we shouldn't be that way. But Joel, they messed up my order for the 100th time. And how many times has Jesus forgiven you? Okay, deep breath. Even if little Johnny, little Susie did it on purpose, can't blame the world for acting like the world. Let Jesus' light shine from you. It doesn't mean you don't correct stuff. But I really wanted that thing, and it was the last one there. I had to elbow that person. No, let the light of Jesus shine. I'm talking about getting real, getting really, really real. Who cares what we do right now? This is easy. The room cheers for what we do. What matters is out there. That's where they need to see it. That's where they see that we're not just being nice because it's Christmas time, but they see there's something deeper. And this is kind of like our moment where we can really give some answers to why this season matters so much. Why we literally keep track of our years differently. Jesus' birth split time in half. We measure it BC, AD. If you're Jewish, BCE, ACE. But the point is, it's changed the way we kept time because of the Romans when they shifted the calendar. The point is, we have a reason to tell them. But we earn that with every interaction we have. We earn the right to have those conversations, which is why Jesus has to shine that light in our life, and we got to keep growing. One reason I love our events so much, I was telling someone this morning about this even, that one reason I love our events is because they're always designed to reach outward. Now, I know for a lot of you, you kind of go, well, no, duh. Well, I know because you get it and you're here, but you got to get, that's unusual for, I'll just say many churches, okay? And what I mean by the fact that it's unusual is we understand that these events don't come out of a vacuum. That we have earned the right in our community that when we do an event, they know, you know, that you can trust us. The community knows they can trust us. Different community partners will promote our events because they trust us. We earned that one relationship at a time, letting the light of Jesus shine into places and making sure that our interactions were what they needed to be. That we didn't compromise, we didn't pull back, we didn't try to pretend we weren't a church. We are what we are, and we're happy to be kids of the King. But we don't have to be mean about it. We can be joyful about it. We can be happy. And so it's shining that light into dark places because that's where it needs to be. Now, again, this is talking to Christians, but what if you're not? Or what if you're simply trying to do religious stuff in hopes that you can rearrange your life in such a way to where you'll feel what we're talking about? See, that's trying to let light come in from the outside. That's not how salvation works. It works because Jesus comes in from the inside and changes it. And now, like a nightlight in your heart, He's shining out. It's not about shining in, it's us shining out. That's what I mean by you have to make this intentional decision, a commitment where you cross that line and you say, not me anymore, but you. And you intentionally, by an act of will, cross that line. You commit your life to Him. It's not something accidental. It's not something done to you. It is something done for you. It's what the cross is. But it's not something that you kind of stumble into and go, oh, I'm a Christian now. No. You say, okay, this is it. I'm stepping over. I'm yours. I receive that gift. I receive the best gift I'm ever going to get. That's what those balloons mean. That's why we celebrate. That's why we hoot and holler every time we have these balloons up, because that means this past week, this was actually a conversation that a man in our church had with two people. He had it on a personal level, and he led those two people to Jesus. And now two more people are going to be in heaven because of this one man. You see, that's what it's about, relationship, one relationship at a time. And if that's you today, I just want to give you a bit of a framework on how you can make Him your King. As we like to say around Christmas time, you can let Him lie down in the mess of your manger. Here's the great news. Jesus isn't afraid of the mess. I mean, He was laid in a feeding trough minutes after He was born. He's not afraid of messes. He's not afraid of the darkness. He conquered it. And He wants to give you hope, and He wants to give you peace, and He wants to give you life. And it's everything we've sung about today. It's everything we've talked about. It's all we do around here is we try to get people to take another step towards Jesus, and this one's the biggest and best step of all. So if that's you today and you want to cross that line and you're like, okay, I want to do that, best as I understand it, you can pray something like this. You can say, God, I admit that I am in darkness, that I have made more than my fair share of mistakes, and I know that I'm broken, and I know I can't fix it myself. I can't do enough churchy stuff to fix it. But I think I understand what He's talking about, and so today I'm committing myself to you, making you King of my life. I'm receiving your gift of light and asking you just to take my heart and transform it. I don't know how it's going to come out of your life and come out of your mouth, but if you prayed a prayer like that, something that you could even say as simple as, Jesus, save me. Okay, That's good, and it's not about the words, it's about your heart. If you did that, we want to know about it, even if you have questions about it. We talk about this connection card a few times, and it's right here on the end of the bulletin. If you prayed a prayer like that, or maybe you have some questions, just mark off the top of that, I'm committing my life to Jesus, or even just say, I have a question about that. Fill that out. We're going to get you some information. We want to walk with you. We're a very relational church. There's only so much we can do with, me on all of you because you outnumber me. We want to have a conversation with you and walk you through this. Make sure you know. Now, if you made that decision today and you know that you did, put that on there. We're going to sign you up for baptism. We have one more coming up. It's at the very last Sunday of the year, December 26th, which is going to be a blowout of a Sunday. My goodness, it's going to be a big day. And we're excited for that. We want to baptize as many as possible. I've lost count of the number of baptisms we have scheduled. So we want to add some more, and we want to celebrate. So you mark that off. You will see some balloons hanging next week. And those balloons will be yours, representing your life that's been changed. And the reason we do balloons, because Jesus told a story about there's more rejoicing in heaven over one found sinner. That when one person comes to Jesus, it ignites a party in heaven. So we just kind of thought, let's just join the party. Let's just celebrate with heaven. If heaven can have a party and have a Jesus-centered hoedown because of someone coming to Jesus, well, why can't we? So that's where it came from, is we want to join the party, and balloons are fun. That's why we do that. And we want to celebrate that. But whatever it is today you need to commit to, our connection card is there, as I mentioned, and we want to make sure that you can check that off, get whatever information you need. We want to walk with you, whatever that next step is, because Jesus is the light piercing the darkness, the death of our darkness, and his birth, which leads all the way to his death and resurrection, marked the countdown to the end of all the darkness.